Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, everyone, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And I have a little video here about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses, and then we're going to get right into the show and our very special guest today.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Well, there you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse, and Vice President of Nursing at Bloom Hemp CBD. I'm a cannabis nurse, cannabis patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really excited to announce that this is my 7th year podcasting The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with their guidelines that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. But before we get started on our very exciting show, we do have to have a message from our sponsors. And as you know, we have an amazing sponsor, Bloom Hemp. Bloom Hemp CBD is a woman and nurse-owned national hemp and CBD supplier, leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic CBD, grown in the mountains of Colorado and tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line to answer questions and explain how and why CBD works in the body. Very excited to have Bloom Hemp as a sponsor, and you can enjoy 10% off with Green Nurse and free shipping at Bloom Hemp. Okay, and so that is all about Bloom. And, you know, cannabis nursing, if you didn't know, I'm going to let you know now, has been recognized as a specialty. The American Nurses Association, which represents 5 million nurses, recognized cannabis nursing last year as a specialty. And nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis by teaching on the endocannabinoid system and how to optimize cannabis as medicine for health, healing, and wellness purposes. Now, in recent years, the wellness community has also experienced a surge of interest in Ayurveda, the ancient holistic practice of health known as the science of life. A fundamental principle of Ayurveda is the use of plants and herbs to foster healing and promote overall wellness. Today's guest is not only a certified cannabis clinician, but also a board-certified Ayurvedic Wellness Counselor, certified yoga and Reiki practitioner. I'd like to welcome Jo Tandberg to the show and give thanks and gratitude for the beautiful newsletter and blog that she wrote for us for November Healing on Ayurveda. So please check the link in the comments and the show notes to read our November 1st newsletter. This was the gift of Jo. So Jo Tandberg is a board-certified Ayurvedic Wellness Counselor with extensive experience, a certified yoga instructor with 500 hours of training and 5,000 hours of teaching. She's a certified cannabis counselor. She served as a speaker and instructor at numerous prestigious national and international events and institutions, including the annual conference of National Ayurvedic Medical Association, the American Herbalists Guild, and the Hemp CBD Expo, among others. Jo's transition to wellness began in 2006 when she began studying and teaching yoga and Ayurveda, two sister sciences, which I find very fascinating, that had a profound impact on our own health, which she's going to talk about today. She incorporated these teachings into artfully curated events by organizing, marketing, and leading yoga and wellness retreats to groups of varying sizes. Retreats are known for the immersive experience combining yoga, Ayurveda, delicious cuisine, plant-based herbal therapies into memorable and unique adventures. Her expertise in wellness is further demonstrated in 2015 through her role as founder of Canna Verde, a platform for education about cannabis and herbal medicines. And in 2018, as founder and CEO of ZV Botanicals, an Ayurvedic wellness formulations brand, Jo created these successful businesses to help people navigate the often confusing and censored natural healing world. She focused her abilities on sharing fact-based research to educate the public of the importance of herbal medicines and therapies based on thousands of years of research. Her organic full-spectrum CBD-infused tinctures, body oils, and healing salves and teas have provided relief to her clients, friends, and family across the globe. And we are very grateful to have Jo here today to share her story with us, what led her into the space, and what she's doing today as a practitioner in cannabis and Ayurveda. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you. Wow, what a lovely introduction. It was fun to listen to.
Isn't it fun to just hear your bio or it's read? It just makes you think like, wow, gosh, I've actually done a lot in this.
I know. I'm like, did I write that?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much for that introduction. Yeah, it's like, where to start? You covered a lot in that perfect bio talk, and I thought, when you said the 2006, I was like, wait a minute, I started before 2006, but really the reason that's true, that's a true fact, is when my studies began. But I really started down this path unknowingly. In 1991, I was recently diagnosed at that time as a college student with Crohn's disease. And that began a very lifelong, unknowingly at the time, lifelong journey into healing, which that was not my goal. I wasn't in college to be a nurse or a doctor or a practitioner. I was to be either a photojournalist traveling around with a backpack and a camera and a pen and my little battery operated typewriter, or I was going to go to law school. And so I had a very different journey planned, and life had a different direction for me. So I began with an illness, and that illness opened up I've always been interested in learning. I was kind of one of those kids that went to the library. I like to read encyclopedias. I bought my first book on alternative healing at a bookstore in, I think, South Georgia, where I was living at the time. I'm from the deep South, so having alternative therapies was not something everywhere around me. It was very hard to find. And I stumbled through for many, many years. Like 15 to be exact. Wow. And then eventually found my way into yoga as a student and then a teacher in '06. And then that gave me the introduction into Ayurvedic medicine. And with a weave or a braid through that entire experience with cannabis, first as this illicit drug that kind of helped me feel better, and then as a medicine that became legal for all these different reasons. And it really stoked my interest in finding out why, like understanding the science behind it, not kind of like, yeah, it made me feel good, but why does it make people feel good? And so that was kind of how it all started.
Wow, that's just amazing. So what inspired you to then explore cannabis and CBD?
Well, my dad was, well, let's see. So first, when California was going legal and all these different measures, when the measure was coming out and the different reasons for why it should be legalized were coming forward, one of them was Crohn's disease. That was one of the diseases that was accepted as a remedy. That's cannabis.
Yeah. Qualifying condition to get a medical card.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I did smoke some weed in my day. I don't quite remember it curing my Crohn's. So I wanted to accept that as truth, but I really didn't get it. And I didn't want to start telling people, oh, guess what? Cannabis is for Crohn's, because it didn't really settle with me the way I understood cannabis. I didn't know you could make oils with it and tinctures and salves and all these things. So I started going down that online, started reading more about it. And that was my first introduction to understanding the different cannabinoids and understanding the different ways of taking it sublingually and in oils. And it kind of blew my mind, but it was still surface information. Yes. I lived now in Washington State, which was also becoming legal. And I had friends in the underground that just grew it because it grew beautifully where we lived on the east side of the Cascades. And so I started working with herbalists, and I, at this point, was in school myself, or starting to study Ayurvedic medicine and Western herbs, and making tinctures and teas for my kids if they got sick. We had a lot of health issues in our family, severe health issues. So I was always looking for something non-pharmaceutical as an adjunct therapy. The cannabis came about through that process of just a confluence of legality, location, people I knew, and my own health issues. And I was then diagnosed. Well, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. That's really the big end of and big story. And his cancer was stage 4 metastatic melanoma, and it had spread at this point to his lymph nodes, in his neck, lung, stomach, and possibly liver. They weren't sure about the liver spot. And so he was given a pretty rough diagnosis. He was at the time in his mid 60s, and he had Crohn's disease his whole adult life. And he dealt with Crohn's disease very differently than me. He took pills and did whatever he wanted. Whereas I was trying to get off any medicines and looking at the long game and about side effects and how your body handles and doesn't handle these drugs. Whereas my dad had a more of like, hey, the pills work, I'm fine. So, and that's important because that comes up later. So when he was diagnosed, he was told that at this point, there were very few options for him because of the severity and the spread and how aggressive it was. And there was one drug that he could possibly take that was a new infusion, but it could put your body into a Crohn's-like state where you could have fissures, you could bleed, and things could go south very quickly. So I said, Dad, if that's your only option, if chemo, surgery, radiation, and not that I was a big fan of those, but if that's not going to even be offered to you, then why don't we try something else? Because in parts of the West Coast, we're now using cannabis oil, CBD, and THC for cancer treatments to help both palliatively and also as an adjunct. And I did not think in a million years my dad would say yes to this. He is a retired Army colonel. He was a career federal prosecutor. He lives in the deep South, and he's very religious. So I was like, not a chance. And he said, okay. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're doing this. And so it was phone calls to friends, who has what can we put into? And I learned as I went. And I was terrified, but I started learning how to make these oils, and I had friends that helped me. In that same time frame, I dove into different organizations, Patients Out of Time, Project CBD. I became a member. I went to their online classes. I flew to Berkeley and went to the national conference. I went to New York. I jumped in because all of a sudden, to me, the whole world just changed, because there was a medicine now that I can grow in my backyard, and I can help my dad or help anybody.
Yes.
So that began that story. And I went through a lot of bumps, buying CBD that was the best there is, according to the University of San Diego's, medical marijuana, which turned out to be junk from Korea. So learning like how to discern and how to, how to make it, but also how to find the right quality. That was a big project and a big expense. But the long story of it is my dad was able to overcome this cancer.
Wow.
He did do some infusions, because even though after 3 months on cannabis oils and Ayurvedic herbs and dietary changes, I mean, it wasn't just take this, we subtracted first and then we added. He had a reduction from his PET scan. He had a reduction in one of the tumor sizes and no spreading. I was like, Dad, this is huge for your cancer. This is 3 months and you are steady and declining. And his oncologist only knew pharmaceuticals. And he's like, you have to do this drug. You have to try it. Why would you not try it? And my brother and I kept saying, well, because you could die from perforated colon. That's why, Dad, you've already had 35 years of issues. He and my mom followed the doctor's advice. They followed the doctor's advice. And in the end, he had to have a blood transfusion. Excuse me, my microphone just dropped.
That's okay. That's okay.
Wow. So that was, sorry about that. So that was a big moment for us, because he, almost died in the hospital, and came home, and we continued the cannabis oils and Ayurvedic, different herb mixes. And it was a lot of trial and error. And in the end, he has been with no cancer, no tumors. He gets PET scans regularly. And his last one was this past Christmas. I was there. And our last report with his oncologist, and they said, you're clean. He has other issues now. Actually, that 3 infusions really messed him up. He now suffers from other issues.
And does he continue taking the oils? Is he on a maintenance dose?
He's not. He stopped after probably 4 years, and he has kind of amnesia over the whole thing. He's like, did I take that? I'm like, Dad. So
yeah, okay.
My brother and I have to kind of like remind them of the whole story, because he's
right.
And he's on a lot of pharmaceuticals now, and because he has a neurological disorder, myasthenia gravis, I don't feel comfortable treating him anymore. And so,
well, myasthenia gravis, do you know how I remembered that in nursing school? This is how I remembered it. Mudslides give it to you. So you just think of when you drink a mudslide, right? It completely disorients your entire body, your neurological system. Things just don't connect properly when you drink too many mudslides. So that's how I remembered myasthenia gravis. It's a neurological disorder that kind of unravels.
And that is one of the potential long-term side effects of that drug he took. And so when he was considering that drug, and I read through the 7 pages of, all the small print that they give you, I'm like, Dad, in the end, this is still in a testing stage. Everybody was dead in 5 years. Like every single person died. So it only prolonged a little bit. And then those that didn't, before they died, a lot of them had some serious neuro issues. I mean, I didn't understand that. I didn't know that term. I don't remember reading that word. But my brother went back afterwards when he was diagnosed last year and almost died, and said, do you realize this could all be connected? And so it kind of just fired me up again.
Yeah. And for our viewers, a lot of people that are new to watching this may not know what Crohn's disease is. So maybe we could just go over that really quickly.
Sure.
Your father and you have, right? You had it as well.
Yeah. It runs in my family. So it's an autoimmune disease that affects for me, it affected my small intestine, and my dad, it affected more of his colon, and it created swelling, scarring, obstruction. For me, it was almost a death sentence. I had it much more serious than my dad. Since a teenager, my symptoms were very different than my dad's symptoms. I was much more weakened by it. I had severe pain all the time, whereas my dad mostly just had chronic diarrhea and not controlled bowels necessarily. Mine was treated
of the entire, so it could go from your enteric nervous system is from your mouth to your butt. So it could affect any area of your GI tract, and each patient is different and the symptoms manifest differently.
Yes. So mine was located in my terminal ileum, at the junction point between my colon and my small intestine and that ileocecal valve there. And so my symptoms that were pretty chronic since I was a teenager is bloating after eating, pain, cramping, either far constipation or can't leave the bathroom. There was like no normalcy in my life. So I was able to, I made it through college with great professors. I transferred to a small school. I was able to work with my teachers and still graduate within a decent time. I had to miss one semester of school. But when it really hit me was in my 20s, late 20s, when I had my first child, who was a daughter. And I did okay when I was pregnant with her, but then after my pregnancy, I went into a pretty dark dive with a hormone change, and I didn't really understand. It's a very misunderstood disease. I understand personally now how much stress, or how we react to stress, and certain personality types can be more affected than others, and I definitely fall into kind of that little type A Virgo, or like I used to be much more like that when I was younger, and so the way it was treated for me was with prednisone. I was on and off prednisone, high doses for 13 years. It's again, I grew up in a place where you just do what the doctor says. I questioned everything, and I still kind of ended up in the same boat. I was on immune suppressant drugs for the whole time. And then I ended up on infusions for 5 years of a low-level chemo drug. And then I had small bowel resective surgery because I was dying from the drugs and the disease. I couldn't eat. My heart, liver, everything, lungs was kind of shutting down. So in 2004, I had part of my colon, small intestine, that ileocecal valve, appendix region all removed. I was then put on low-level chemotherapy, self-injections for the rest of my life. And I did it for 1 month. And I quit, and my doctor and I got a divorce. And I loved this doctor. This was in Portland, Oregon. It was my most progressive minded, but she's like, hey, I got 2 hours of nutrition training and no herbal training. So I would love to help you not be on drugs, but I don't know how. And so I jumped off the cliff. My family was really in disagreement with me. My former husband, part of why, and my family just thought I was irresponsible because I had 2 kids, and how dare I not do what the doctor says for the rest of my life. And so that took me down the road of finding the right herbal medicines. I started in Chinese medicine, but Chinese medicine just did not agree with me. The acupuncture was wonderful. The herbs always messed up my digestion. I could not find the right practitioner, probably, but also the right formulas. And my son started having issues such as Crohn's disease and had a lot of health issues since he was born. He was born with issues because I believe my placenta had a lot of the pharmaceutical. I did not know I was going to get pregnant with my second child. I wasn't planning on having 2 kids because of my illness. And I did not know, and was never told about the fact that the drugs that I was taking in my bloodstream could affect a future child. So he was born kind of allergic to everything. He needed to be on a breathing device for the first couple of years. He had hives and eczema all over him, but he still suffers with it 24 years old. So his health took my health issue to a whole nother level, because now your baby's sick.
Right.
And a sick baby getting pharmaceutical drugs and inhalants and creams that make him scream was not the answer either. So after 2 years of that, we moved to the West Coast because we were still living in the South, for cleaner air, for like better air, less humidity, because the humidity would make him scream and cry and scratch and bleed. So we moved to a more arid climate, which made a big difference. And then it was a journey of getting him well, which has been a full-time job up until, well, still, he still has a lot of stuff he's dealing with. Yeah. But cannabis then, so the full circle is I saw an Ayurveda practitioner. We were living in San Diego at the time, moved a lot. And that was my first experience with an Ayurveda practitioner. And he recommended some herbs that were the first ever herbs that helped both me and my son. Like, it was a discernible shift in our health. I'm like, what was in that pill?
Yeah.
And curiosity. What was in that pill? And it's funny, now I know what was in that pill, and it's like 3 ingredients. It's pretty simple. And because Ayurveda is about understanding your true nature, and it has to do with the different tastes on our tongue and the qualities behind those tastes, and how we digest those tastes, and then finding medicine in nature that balances those tastes, which have an energetic effect on our body. So when that happened, I was already becoming a yoga teacher. I was with a phenomenal teacher, and he recommended, our teaching lineage had Ayurveda in it, as it should. Like, all yoga should be Ayurveda. In India, they don't separate the two. In the United States, it became 2 different businesses. So I was living in the right place at the right time, and I started studying and incorporated everything I could. And it just changed my family's life. It changed my kids' life. My daughter became a certified herbalist. My son's been able to stay off of pharmaceuticals since he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in middle school. And it just changed everything. And then we incorporated the cannabis oils and the CBD, and my kids watched that whole process, how to grow, how to make products, how to respect the plant, how to teach their friends about it, how to use and consume recreationally safely. And so it just kind of snowballed into
It's a lifestyle, a way of life.
Exactly.
Plant medicine is truly a way of life. So then for the new people that are watching, can you please, I know you mentioned what it is, but just go over it again. What is Ayurveda? So when someone says, oh, I want to have an Ayurvedic consultation, what does that mean?
So Ayurveda it's the oldest form of medicine that we know of on the planet. And there's like a little controversy between which is older, Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, but it's believed that Ayurvedic medicine is a precursor to Chinese medicine. It predates even a language and a written down language. So Sanskrit was how it was originally taught and passed down in books. But before that, it was orally passed down from every family member. And it was teaching the wisdom of life. As Ayur actually, and Veda is wisdom and Ayur means life. And so Ayurveda is literally the science of living. And what it does is it looks at everything from humans to trees, to rocks, to water, everything that's in the universe. It looks at this through the lens of energetics in the way of elements. So as we break down the universe and what things are, matter, and air, space, fire, water, all of those are present in everything. There's the five elements. And Chinese just have a little bit different view of it, but we're kind of saying the same thing. And those elements are in different proportions in everything. And some of the obvious things are like the ocean. Well, it's water. Well, it's also salt, and salt's a mineral. That's earth. It's kind of a hot salt, so that's fiery, and it moves. So there's air in it. So we can find the elements in a mountain, in a tree. Well, the most exciting is in humans. And so we have different, what we call humors or doshas. And our dosha is these 5 elements in combination of 3 different doshas or humors or behaviorals, different words for different cultures. And we use mostly the word dosha in Ayurveda. And those are combinations of either the elements that create more of your wind energy, which is the movement of everything from swallowing to coughing, to how we move blood through and air through our body. Anything that's movement oriented, there's air behind that. There's space that's being moved, and that is the wind energy, or as we call it in Ayurveda, vata. The second dosha or humor is of transformation. It's the change that happens that's associated with fire. And so in our body, when we eat and different acids are released to break down the foods that we taste on the tongue, because that's the beginning of the digestive process, then we break that down and we react accordingly to metabolize and to clear the waste out of our system. And that is a system and an energy of heat or fire. And then we have or transformation or change. And then we have the third dosha, which is called pitta. And then we have the third dosha, which is kapha, and that or earth or phlegm, as they call it in Tibetan medicine, which that is our more solid water and earth structure behind our living. That's our lymphatic system. It's our muscles. It's our stability. It's our ability to kind of to live and to have sustainability within us. And so these 3 doshas cannot be without the other. You can't be just one. And people will say, oh, I did a quiz and in Yoga Journal and I'm pitta. It's like, well, no, you're not pitta, but you have a predominance of fire energy in you. You have to have all 3 or you'd be dead. And so what Ayurveda does, it looks at each individual. So everyone is so different. You might be 22% of one and 42% of the other, and wherever I am, 40 something percent of the third. And the practitioner asks you a lot of questions, and it's going to be about your personality, how you handle stress, what your emotional norms and abnorms are, what your bowel movements are like, what your urination, what your menstruation, your hair, your nails, your skin, everything. If you're getting a thorough evaluation. And those questions we plug into, most of what I do is all on paper, but you can do this now on software, but I'm kind of a handwritten person. And so then we look at this and we decide, or we then align it to these doshas, and then come back to you and say, here's what I learned about you, Sherry. You have a lot of fire in you, and that fire helps keep you active in the president of Green Nurse, and allows you to be this nurse and stay orderly. And this is probably some of your digestive issues or non-issues that you have, but you also have a bit of vata in you, and that's probably pretty creative. And maybe your nails are kind of dry, and you have maybe slide into constipation versus the other way, and not a whole lot of kapha. You kind of need more of that to get grounded, because you might feel more airy than grounded, for example. And so when you're having a consultation, we talk about all these things. It's a lot of talking. I ask a lot of questions. I want to hear your story. I want to see how you answer my questions. And that gives me a pretty good blueprint of who you are from an Ayurvedic lens. Mm-hmm. And then what I do is, or what a counselor or practitioner would do, or a doctor, you can go as high as a doctor level, we will then prescribe lifestyle for you. First, it might be, you need to go to bed before 11 o'clock. And let's just start that. And you're not getting enough water. And here's one herb that I want you to try, and then write to me in 30 days. And that's kind of how we start. Or maybe no herbs. It really depends. Herbs, essential oils, food is thy medicine. We always try to heal with food first. Hydration. We look at, I look at pharmaceuticals. What are you taking? Is there, I had this conversation just today with someone. I'm like, well, did anyone ask you if these meds mixed are causing this problem? Oh, well, I think they looked at that. I'm like, you said 5 doctors in 5 days and nobody knows what's wrong with you. Maybe we should look at your drug list. Yeah. You just never know. And so, and different practitioners, some will just take your pulses and look at your tongue, usually at a doctor level, and they can tell you so much about yourself, it blows your mind. I'm not that subtly, I'm more of a verbal person, more of a researcher. And then the cannabis part of it, when I was studying and learning about CBD and THC and all these beautiful terpenes and cannabinoids, I was like, well, this is just another plant in the Ayurvedic toolkit. But why aren't we learning about this in Ayurveda? Like, nobody talks about this. And so I did some deep diving. I stepped on some toes. I probably irritated a few traditional doctors from India, but I didn't stop learning and asking, and then said, well, hey, cannabis is a synergizer. It does really well with other herbs, and other herbs in Ayurveda almost always are blended with something to balance. So what if we put them together? And that way people can get, and not always, sometimes, not in the same actual bottle, but sometimes, and sometimes just putting them together is take this in the morning and then take your CBD and then something of that nature. Right. So that's kind of the big story around Ayurveda. It also includes, recommendations on, colors and yoga and exercise and times to eat and times not to eat. I mean, it really is a lifestyle practice. It puts a lot of energy and education into how to cleanse and detoxify, but then with the same amount of energy and information, how to then rejuvenate and grow. So we're not about big toxic cleanses and big, we're going to do this 21-day cleanse and then starve. Without, a lot of people hear about Ayurveda and cleanses, and they are very specific and different than any other cleanse anybody else offers. They're the safest I know of. And so it's all gentle and subtle. It's the subtle body.
Nice. Wow. That's absolutely fascinating. Yes. Wow. Fascinating stuff. So just, and this is for our viewers, and this is educational. I'm just going to ask a question. In terms of Ayurvedic medicines that come from India, do the herbs and foods have to be Indian?
No, typically, so if you go to an Ayurvedic botanical website, for instance, and you look at, like on my website, I have a Shop with Joe page, and I highlight my favorite CBD companies and my favorite Ayurvedic companies. And the Ayurveda companies that I represent, because I love them, I use them with my family, I have forever. And one of them is my school, and they've been a pharmacy since 1941. So they kind of know what they're doing. Many of them are. However, in the United States now, and this was actually the topic of our medical association conference this past spring, is about local and finding regional and local alternatives because basically it's properties. It's the property of the plant. So we can have a plant in Ayurvedic medicine that's hard to get, and that's happening more and more because Ayurveda is the fastest growing natural or alternative medicine philosophy. It's not a philosophy, it's a science, but the way it's being marketed in the United States right now, the numbers are in like the high billions of what it's estimated. So Ayurveda is just taking off, which is fun for those of us that have been in it for like 20 years. We're like, finally. But with that, COVID happened, and we couldn't get a lot of our herbs from India, and for multiple reasons. And a lot of the herbs in India, for the companies that know what they're doing and that care about rejuvenative methods of farming and sustainability, you can't harvest a tree every year. You can't pick certain plants every harvest season. You have to have a certain way of growing. And some companies have not followed that very strongly. And so you have some herbs that are going extinct. And so we're looking now, one of my favorite companies, Banyan Botanicals, who is just on my website, they have their own farm in Southern Oregon, and then they cooperatively work with other farms. And if they can't grow the specific plant because it's in the Himalayan mountain range and we don't have that high altitude here, then finding something that might have the same qualities, the same, it has a bitter aspect, it's more of a resin, like there's specific things you need for certain issues. And now we're learning more and more how to work collectively and collaboratively with Western herbalism, which is really exciting. And that's usually, there's always something you can find in your backyard or in your town that would be a substitute for in Ayurveda.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I do want to just kind of share your website really quickly here so people can see. Shop with Jo. Boom. Look at this.
Yeah, so Banyan Botanicals, wonderful company, small. They're a B Corp. I know the CEO. I know their top people because of learning from them and over the years. Bloom, my favorite CBD company. Microdrops, that's a psilocybin and mushroom company that an Ayurveda practitioner runs and owns and makes the products. And then Kerala Ayurveda is where I went to school, and that is also another beautiful herbal company. And then there's the Green Nurse, and Vibrant Blue Oils is a Seattle-based, woman-owned essential oil company that I use and love. I don't use those for like in my big volume for when I make things, but I use them for smaller volume oils and things of that nature. And then Ahara Rasa ghee. So ghee is one of the most cherished, most loved foods and medicines in Ayurveda. And this, again, a woman-owned ghee company. And she actually bought the company from my other friend who owns the psilocybin microdrops company. And they didn't know that I knew them both, and I didn't know them both in the same way. I'm like, wait a minute, I have a friend that just sold a ghee company. And she makes beautiful ghees, and they're cultured, organic, grass-fed, under the moon with mantra, like the real deal.
Nice. Very, very good. Your site is absolutely beautiful. Shop with Jo. You can see that she's actually vetting us. How nice. The Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse and Bloom Hemp CBD. And the thing that I love too, I'm not sure if you know this, Jo, is that Bloom Hemp, before we purchased it, was actually owned by a group of guys, and the doctors that did the original formulations was an Ayurvedic practitioner. So
he's the first person I called when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I don't know if I told you that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So Dr. Sunil Pai has a practice in New Mexico, Sanjevani Wellness, and he formulates a lot of his own herbs and, supplements, and he's got a store. And so he was actually the original doctor that formulated our essentials line, which has a combination of the CBD, trace amount of THC, minor cannabinoids, and other botanicals in an Ayurvedic formulation. So he created those to be symptom targeted, which I found.
And that's what won me over. I was like,
that's what won you over?
Yeah, that's what won me over. Well, I mean, I also love you and Elizabeth, but when I saw that, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Doctor, what? I just didn't know because I hadn't kept up on business, but it was great to see that. And I felt, because as you mentioned, I did found and run my own CBD Ayurvedic company for 5 years. And I made a very difficult choice last fall to close down for multiple reasons. A lot of transition in my life, but also as a single female without a big angel investor behind me, it was becoming too much with a lot of the issues around advertising and marketing and all of it. So
yeah, it's a lot.
I decided it's a lot. And I was putting way more energy into the actual business of a business, even though I had people that worked with me that did a lot of this, and I wasn't counseling as much. And I was kind of losing my passion, because what I like to do is help people. And I felt like I was doing a lot of shipping and fixing websites and dealing with down technology and bottles and labels and so many other things that were taking away from what I realized was really what I'm good at. And I wasn't as good at it. You kind of learn, I think you grow, and you're like, this really, I did it. My husband kept saying, you did such a good job. I'm like, I could have done better. I could have, I think I do better counseling. You know?
Yeah, no, you're a
Some of it's
wonderful
what you're good at.
practitioner. And that's how I first met you, was Elizabeth actually booked a consultation with you. So we don't,
Right.
she said she gave me permission to share. So yeah, so that's how we
Fantastic.
first met, and how, and really some of the things that you suggested, we still do today, like scraping our tongues, like people don't even realize,
One
brushing.
of the most important things. Yep. One of the
Yeah,
most
so let's
important things,
talk
because
about
that's the beginning of the digestion, like you mentioned with Crohn's.
that.
That's the first stage of our digestive process. So if your tongue is coated, which most people's are, that first bite of food that you have, your brain is not really able to tell your pancreas and your kidneys and your liver and your stomach and everything what's coming, because it can't really decipher what's in there. And that's a huge shift for people, especially with like people with halitosis or digestive issues or acid reflux, issues with their teeth. That and mouth pulling alone can make such a gigantic shift in your health. Cardiac
Oil
health.
pulling, you mean? Oil pulling?
Mm-hmm,
Yes,
mm-hmm.
I love that. Coconut oil.
Yeah, and then just the self massage, we call it abhyanga. Putting your own oils on your body every day, which is a stimulation of your lymphatic system, which is our big filter in our body. A lot of people don't understand. It's not really even talked about, the lymphatic system. It's kind of like the stepsister.
And it should be, because the thing is with the lymphatic system, there's no pump, right? So it requires us to move. That's where motion
So
is.
in yoga, the way we pump our lymphatic system, and it's almost never taught like this. And people that I was teaching up until recently, my classes, they heard a lot about their lymphatic system. I talked about it throughout class,
Great.
and when we do an inhale and bring our hands up over our head, and then we exhale into a forward fold, and we're compressing our diaphragm, and then we inhale and we come back and we back bend again, that is actually pumping our lymphatic system. That and our downward dog, even we think about like our hamstrings and how we're stretching our back and our shoulders, but we're also pumping our ankles, and those motions of just walking. The reason 10 minutes of walking can reduce your blood sugar by 35% after a meal and help keep your weight down is because you're pumping your lymphatic system. I mean,
there you go.
In Europe and most of the world, they walk for their meals, or they go on some stroll. They very rarely just eat, sit. There's movement. It's kind of an American problem.
It's an American problem. Well, yeah, the United States we're the country that is not leading in health at all,
No, we spend a lot of money on it, but it's not in the way that it needs to be done to where it's actually helping people.
Yeah. And I have a couple questions too, because I think some of these things are good. And this is just for Ayurvedic, and I know we're going to be talking a lot about this next week. So next week we have a webinar that Jo is going to be doing. She's going to be leading us. We have beautiful slides that she's created on Ayurveda, details, cannabis, CBD, and different formulations. And she's got some beautiful slides. But until then, a couple questions I have are, what are some few and simple, inexpensive things that can be done or taken every day to incorporate meaningful elements of Ayurveda and steering the body in the best direction for healing and recovery? So for people, in other words, what are your top, let's say top three tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs, Ayurveda, that people can just do?
Well, one of them, which is, and some people already do this, but in the United States, not very common, is eliminate ice from your drinks. Ice in drinks is an immediate, I want to say buzzkill. It's an Agni killer. So Agni is the word that we use because there's really not a good word in the US in English language. Agni is this inner digestive fire. Think of it as a campfire. And so you have a campfire, you're just kind of chilly outside, you're standing outside, and you have, let's say a marshmallow or some food that you want to heat over that. Of course, rarely would I use marshmallow or hot dogs in Ayurveda, but let's just, for the sake of symbolism here, if you are trying to cook that piece of meat or piece of sugar over a fire and you dump ice water on it, what happens to the fire? It goes out. It kind of smolders. If you add gasoline to it, it explodes and it will burn. And so it's finding that middle ground where the heat, the acid, really, when we're talking about the acids in our stomach, and we have very different ones depending on what foods are coming through, which is why your tongue scraping is so important. So I'd put tongue scraping number one. And then number two, I would say eliminating ice from your drinks. Now, if you are out running and it's the middle of summer and you live in New Mexico, then yeah, you might need a cold icy drink to cool you down if you're overheating, but rarely are people overheating when they're drinking. That's, certain times of year, it's one thing, but the ice drinks with meals is one of the worst things you can do for metabolism. And it's so common only in this country. It's really nowhere else in the world. Do people put ice in their drinks, unless they know you're an American and they'll say, do you want ice in your drink?
You also have to think about too, when you're putting something that cold. So just think, our bodies are 98.6 degrees. So you're putting, right, and you want to digest food. It's almost as if you're freezing the area and putting the fire out in your digestive tract to be able to do its job in breaking down the food so you can utilize those nutrients that you need to fuel your cells. Is that kind of what's happening?
And then the foods that aren't breaking down will kind of sit in your stomach because they're trying to wait to get that balance back, that pH acidic balance back, and then the fermentation starts and you belch a little bit, or you feel bloated, or you kind of feel really uncomfortable pressure. And sometimes just sipping on warm water does the trick. Warm water in a thermos throughout your day to stay hydrated. Maybe throw some lemon in that, or some ginger or honey, or and I'll talk next week about some other really classic recipes of Ayurveda that you can include that can, I've seen it turn around diverticulitis surgeries, like something that you can literally make in your kitchen with under $5. There's a lot of things we can do to help balance out and heal the lining of our intestines. People think often that we can, heal our skin, but what about the inside? And, my whole adult life has been about healing the insides of my body because, between scar tissue and the damage that was done in my body, I felt like, think about like a major scar, like from cardiac surgery. If you have that on the outside, what's on the inside, especially if it's in your intestinal tract. And many of us, if you're dealing with acid reflux or bloating or cramping, those types of issues, oftentimes, I'm not saying it's going to cure you, but it is not helping you to have ice in your drinks. So that is definitely a big one. Great. And that's one that I have a lot of people that don't like that. They do not like it when I give them that as their homework.
Well, it would be an interesting experiment to journal. To really journal, whether if you have icy drinks and non-icy drinks or warm tea, for sure. But those are really good tips and tricks. And it's just basic. It's just basic things that you can do every single day. Amazing.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, is the tongue scraper. We're also very big advocates of, we put oil everywhere. If there's a hole in the body, for the most part, we use oils. We use castor oil, sesame oil, olive oils, coconut oil, depending on the oil, always organic and raw, the best qualities you can find, but oiling the body so you're healing it from the outside in along with the inside out with our foods, incorporating ghee into your diet, especially in the fall and the winter, because ghee is for almost, and that's clarified butter, but it's not just clarified butter. There's a little bit more energetic behind it, which I can talk about at another time. But ghee is something that almost no matter what your predominant dosha is, or your digestive issue, almost anyone can digest it because you're separating out the solids and it becomes like a non-lactose food. But it also has a subtle healing quality to our digestion. It both can spark it and stoke it, but it also won't inflame it. And nice. So for most people, again, everyone's different, but it's a good thing to start adding, like putting it on your toast or adding it in your pasta or putting it in your oatmeal or adding it to your coffee. Just a little bit of fat. Our brain is made of fat. We need to have good fats in our body. And oftentimes people are drying out from the inside. They're dehydrated. Yes. They don't have enough liquid in their system. They don't have enough good salts and good fats because they're on some kind of wacky diet and they don't understand why they can't lose weight.
Well, and the other thing too about fat is cannabinoids are lipophilic. They're fat loving. Mm-hmm. So adding in the ghee would actually improve cannabinoid probably utilization and uptake and distribution throughout the body. Nutrition is one of the big things that when we're working with patients that we want to talk about. What else are you eating and not eating? What are you doing? What are you drinking? And how, we can optimize cannabis as medicine. So diet, huge. So adding ghee, a little bit of fat. I I haven't used ghee, but it's something that I'm interested in. So
check it out, and I highly recommend the Hara ghee. It's fabulous. And there's many different. She does different flavors and different herbs that she adds to them, like adaptogenic herbs, and she does some more on like the sweet side if you're trying to do something like really get yourself. Like my husband does not like the taste of ghee, and I swear it's in his head. I'm like, you're Danish, you like pickled herring, how can you not eat ghee? And he, and he's finally now after a meal, he's like, was there ghee in that? I'm like, there's ghee in everything I make. Literally, you never don't get ghee. You're just now not noticing it every single time.
Right.
And I would say for the third things, you asked for three. I've already given three, but sleep. So, every single class I've ever taken in Ayurveda, and I've taken quite a few, and I study with, medical doctors who also are Ayurvedic doctors who literally have been born and raised in this world. And we always start every workshop, every class, every training with the importance of sleep, how it affects our stress levels, and how if you're going to be sick and you're going to die young, it's going to be because of stress and lack of sleep. You can also have a disease, but the disease has a better chance of spreading or incapacitating you if you're not able to fight it because you're not sleeping. Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you got 4 hours or 6 hours. It's when you sleep. So the doshas all have a circadian rhythm to them. And that's, again, something I can talk about next week. So at certain times of the year, universally, or it doesn't matter where you are, at certain times on a 24-hour clock, which is basically with the moon and the sun and the earth, not our calendars. We have times when the vata, the movement energy, is at its height. We have times when that fire energy is its strongest, and which is transformation and digestion. And then we have the time when stability and structure is the time. And they are 4-hour blocks. Well, the time between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is when the fire, the pitta, and that agni, that cooking fire that digests our food, is at its height. It's when it has the most power. So if you have that much fire and power, then you want to make sure that's when you give it the most to consume. Otherwise, if we're eating, and let me go back to consumption. So consumption in this case does not necessarily mean food. It can mean anything we take in through our 5 senses. Everything in Ayurveda, we look at all 5 senses because the senses are what form the mind. Where is the mind? Can you actually see it under a telescope or a microscope or with our eyes? It's subtle, it's everywhere, and it comes from our experiences. And those experiences all come in through the senses. It's what we hear, what we see, what we feel, what we taste, what we smell. And when we are sleeping, and from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is when ideally we should be sleeping. And a lot of people will tell me, oh, I get 8 hours, but I go to bed at 1. And I'm like, yeah, you're missing 3 hours of digestion. So in those 4 hours is when our brain needs us to be slightly unconscious. So it can go in and it can figure it all out. It's like the hard drive coming in and doing a backup. And it's like, okay, so what did you see today? Oh, that was some pretty violent crap. Okay, we got to weed through that. Okay, what did you hear? Oh, she said that to you? Okay, that's pretty harsh. What did you eat? Oh, that's a lot of fat. I mean, whatever it is. Or it was a beautiful day and everything was perfect. But that 10 to 2 time is when our brain turns it into information that we can process, and it also separates out what we need to get rid of. And when we don't sleep well in those times, it sets us up for long-term disability because of stress, because the body is holding on to what we call ama, and ama is anything that we don't digest in the body. So it could be mental, emotional, or physical, and it's like gunk. And that gunk is real. It's like a molecule of emotion.
So 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is where we do the best digestion of all areas of our lives. And we do that best when we're sleeping.
Yes. Okay, and then the daytime, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is when our digestion is also at its height. And that is more aligned with the physiological. So that's when our largest meal is ideally eaten. Okay. Doesn't work for everyone. Most cultures do have their biggest meal at lunch. The U.S. culture with our 40-hour work week and the way we set it up with, industry and assembly line and all that, we haven't really made that as easy. I noticed that my clients over the last 15, 16 years, that's one of the first things they would try to do, even if they pre-made food and brought it to work with them, to where they would have a large, warm lunch, hot lunch at, sometime between that time frame between 10 and 2, because it gives you the most time to break it down and to pull those nutrients and to shed those toxins, along with the warm water throughout the day without the ice and the scraping of the tongue in the morning to make sure that all communication is open. And those are things that, I do all the time. I recommend, my kids do. My daughter now, she's 26, and she said one of the funniest things to me. She was like, yeah, this one guy she was dating. I'm like, so what happened to that guy? I liked him. She's like, he just didn't have good oral health. He wouldn't get into the tongue scraping. I'm like, is that really true? And she's like, yes, it's real. If you don't scrape your tongue, I am not kissing you. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, it's, now it's ingrained in my kids, and they're, for better or for worse, but it is, once you do it, you kind of can't go back.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Rebel Wellness, and then invite everyone to our webinar next week. So Rebel Wellness is your company. Tell us about that.
So Rebel Wellness is a private membership club that it's in the growth stage. It's launching in March. This is basically me taking the last 20 years of my life's work from Ayurvedic and yogic teaching and practicing and mentoring, along with my CBD, THC, cannabis clinician work, and my production and formulation making, and putting it all together into a club where, and this is also so that people can find a safe place to talk about things without necessarily being shut down. I've learned over the years there's so little I can say on Facebook and Instagram, and it's hard to advertise when you're really small. And so I wanted a way that I can keep teaching, but do so in a way that I don't feel like I'm always looking over my shoulder of what I'm saying. And so I wanted to put together a club where because people that communicate, I feel like in group, have a higher probability of sticking with new routines. So this club it's all about meeting together collectively on weekly basis, having accountability to making changes in your life. It's recipes, it's videos, it's me getting comfortable in front of a camera and being on videos, because it's kind of not my favorite thing to do. So it's pushing my thank you. It's pushing my boundaries a little bit, and it's just giving me a platform to do all the teaching that I want to do, and to make it a commitment for people, like a 3-month or a 6-month or a 1 year, in a way that there's accountability on their part, but there's also a place where I can keep coming back to every week, and we can just keep teaching, but you can join at any time. And then you get special, it was going to be, I'm going to send you these big baskets of all these beautiful products. And I realized that that's exhausting. And so it's more part of why I'm building the shop page on my website. This is a new venture for me, is that these are who I use. This is what I order for my family and what people get for Christmas and the whole thing. I ship stuff to my brother today. And I still will make products, and, I just like to gift people things, but it's a way for me to spread so much wisdom, and do so that people can make new friends. They can find other like-minded people that are looking for change. And I'll also be bringing in other professionals. So I'll have guest speakers, nurses, doctors, people that specialize in like Sanskrit, for people that want to learn about Sanskrit. I'll look and see what I envision is the group that comes together and continues to grow will also be offering what they know. And so it's not just me. It's not me sitting up on a stage teaching. It's me opening up the conversation, and let's bring our goals together. And there's a lot in common we can do. And then individually, there's other things that I can help people do on their own.
Excellent.
So the goal is to launch at the spring equinox, and starting with a cleanse. So a cleanse that we all go through together, that you kind of start on March 1st-ish, about the date. This will all be solidified by the end of the year. And
okay,
I've been in the middle of a move. So
we're going to sign up for sure.
Yeah.
Why not? I think it would be great.
Perfect. And I think having, it'll be so fun to have professionals from all different backgrounds. I've seen some of my mentors that have created clubs like this, and, a tax group came out of it, because there was a tax attorney there, and people were having questions about their business that had nothing to do with Ayurveda, but it was a stressor in their life. And they're like, okay, how do we address this stress? And maybe there's a lawyer, or maybe there's, a gymnastics coach, and somebody's like, I need some help for my kid. And so I just want to bring people together so they can find other trustworthy sources that have this wisdom braid. I like to use the braid, the threes, this wisdom that kind of threads through, and people can meet new friends, because it's hard to meet people, especially the older we get, and to find like minds.
That's it. Like-minded people that want to grow in health, and grow and help each other become the best versions of themselves. Yeah,
and the rebel part is because of the cannabis part, because we will be talking about cannabis and plant medicine, and I've done talks on my website. There's a blog about psychedelic medicine, and I'm getting into sober psychedelics with lights and sound therapy. That's something that I'm moving into with a location, a physical location in my town. So just wanting people to see all the options. There's so many things you can do that are non-pharmaceutical based, and having a place to share, and other people share their experiences.
Wow. Joe, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for taking the journey to figure out what works for you and sharing it for others. You're truly an example of what it means to live your best life and help others do the same. And we're extremely grateful to have you on our platform and to have you work with us and to be presenting next week and ongoing. So this has been an amazing podcast. Very grateful. Join us next week. You can see in the show notes and in the comments, you can see Joe Tandberg's website. You can see where you can sign up. And we also have the webinar link to sign up for her webcast that we're going to be doing next Wednesday at 4:20 Pacific time. And remember, everyone, what it's all about. It's truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. And I'm going to end with my other favorite video. And we will see you all next week for Clinical Conversations webcast with Joe Tandberg.
Thank you.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.